Peace, family. I'm watching on the news this morning, and you know that Tim Scott is trying to be president of the United States. The black guy who claims systemic racism no longer exists in America. Well, um, they were doing a poll, and you know what? Let me just let them explain it. Watch this.
News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. I know, Steve, you've been looking at all the polling. What or who do Republican voters want?
Yeah, well, at the moment, the Republican voters are telling pollsters that they still want the candidate they put up in 2016, the candidate they put up in 2020, and that's Donald Trump. You're looking here at a Monmouth poll that was taken a week ago. It was open-ended. They just asked folks, they didn't give them any names. They just said, you tell us, who do you want to be, Republicans, your candidate in 2024? And look, Donald Trump leading the way at 43%. I think most notably, that's a big gain for Trump. This same poll asked the question back in December, and he was actually trailing Ron DeSantis in December. Remember, Republicans were coming off a rough midterm election. A lot of folks were pointing the finger at Trump at January 6th, at his claims about the 2020 election. DeSantis had just been reelected in a monstrous landslide in Florida. But here we are now in the spring of 23, and once again, Donald Trump has pulled far ahead. DeSantis a distant second. You mentioned Pence getting in the race tomorrow. 3% technically counts for third. And the man getting in today, Chris Christie, you don't even see his name on this list. He's not even registering in the most recent poll.
Now, as you can see on that list, Tim Scott is ranked fourth. Donald Trump, when they asked the Republicans who they want to be president of the United States back in December 22, only 26% of people wanted Donald Trump. Now, here it is, May of 2023, and his numbers didn't increase 17%. This is the guy who had one of the biggest defeats in midterms, blamed for the insurrection on January 6th. His numbers increased just over a few months. Tim Scott come in here at third place. No scandals associated with him other than his stupidity, but 3%. But this is just the beginning. Watch this.
Pence have in common is this from the same poll of Republicans here. They both have the highest unfavorable score. Look at Pence. 35% of Republicans view him unfavorably, 46 positive. And look at the Christie number here, just 21.47. That's the worst number there in terms of popularity with Republicans.
Now the interesting thing to this, Mike Pence and Tim Scott in the previous poll was tied at 3%. Nikki Haley barely made the list at 1%. They blamed Mike Pence for not doing what he's supposed to do during the insurrection. Here you got Donald Trump, the instigator, the architect of the insurrection, both polling above Tim Scott. Tim Scott has a 44% favorability record among the Republicans, and one of the smallest at 8%. And despite that, he still can't top and will crack the top three. Donald Trump at the top at 77%, unfavorable 17%, more than twice as what Tim Scott has. Mike Pence has a 35% rating of unfavorability among Republicans, and he's still on top of Tim Scott, who only has an 8% unfavorability rating. How is that possible, Tim Scott, if systemic racism does not exist? How is that possible? Nikki Haley, who barely made the poll at 1% in the previous chart, among favorability among Republicans, now she's 47%, more than Tim Scott, and an unfavorability rate of 16%, which is twice of that of Tim Scott. You see, Tim Scott, all your cooning, all your denial for massa has done you nothing. You just a good old boy that they bring along to get along, to prop you up, and you go out there and you spew on their garbage, their rhetoric, talking about how you don't believe in systemic racism. Then tell me why you're not polling higher than this. How is it that your favorability rate is not equal um, to raising you up in the polls? This is, and not even the favorability rate, your unfavorable rate is the lowest out of everybody that's taken. There's nobody that you know. It's sad, Tim, when you see a black man clearly educated and you just in such denial, and you going on talk shows talking about how systemic racism does not exist. You's a fool.